Hello everyone. So got a few more things painted up and completed that I thought I'd show you. Hard on the heels of July Wargaming update that I've already given you, but as I said at the time, a lot of things seem to be coming to the end of the painting process all at the same time. So in front of you here you see some Wargames Atlantic plastic figures suitable for the Box of Rebellion. I've got an awful lot to say about these figures. I'm not quite sure how to really go about it, so I've set the table up to try and get as much in the frame as I can while concentrating on the figures. So in the gap at the back there, I've made a bit of room to put the box that these boxes, or so-called boxes, came in. Now, I've already painted up one box, and this is sort of just under half of a second box, and I've already given you my opinion on the box set. And at the time, last time I showed you any painted figures from this set, I said I had reservations and I wasn't terribly pleased with the way any of the figures had turned out. You know, not totally dissatisfied or displeased, but not entirely happy. And now, having done these figures, I think I can definitively say that I regret my purchase of these figures, and I want to talk about why. So, Wargames Atlantic, very popular range of hard plastic figures. I think as figures they're not bad. I mean, plastic isn't my favoured type of medium for Wargames figures, but I can see, I'm not opposed to plastic figures, I can see their use. For me in particular, I tend to favour them when I need to have lots and lots of individual figures in my army, so it really suits colonial warfare for me. So I've got lots of plastic Zulus from Warlord and from Perry. These are the first ever Wargames Atlantic figures that I've purchased, and you know, I'm sort of impressed with them in one way, but totally dissatisfied with them in another. They are designed to a point. They are designed really cleverly, so they have got maximum use out of the contents of the box. There are 6 sprues, I think that's right, yeah, 6 sprues with 5 bodies on each sprue. Lots of individual heads that you can attach to the bodies, lots of arms holding lots of different types of weapon that you can attach to the body. So in theory, you know, they have maxed out on the flexibilities and the permutations and the combinations, so that you can. It results in a huge number of variations and so on that you can produce from this box, but it goes horribly wrong because they have tried too hard to make that flexibility possible. So let me explain what I mean. As you can see here, it says that this box contains boxes. Now, you could put all the various components together to produce something that looks vaguely like what a Boxer would have looked like during the Boxer Rebellion. But it only looks vaguely like that because they have attempted to give the purchaser the option of producing lots of other possibilities and troop types. And this is where this definition of the contents as being boxes sort of goes wrong. It says on the box, I don't know whether you can be able to read it at this distance, you can build up to 10 figures in the box as the famous Kanzu Braves. And presumably the photograph of two figures there is intended to represent Kanzu Braves. It's all getting very fudged and woolly because this appearance here really is approaching the appearance of a regular Chinese infantryman in the sort of mid to late 19th century. The Kanzu Braves, if I can show you now, an illustration from the Osprey book on the Boxer Rebellion. Kanzu Braves actually looked like this. Now you can see that the figures that you can put together try and zoom in without it going out of focus. Hope that's still in focus there. You can see that these figures are a pretty good approximation. Well, they're almost a little 99% accurate in the way they have depicted this figure here. You have the clothing which has the two side aprons. You have an option for the scarf over the head. So you have heads that you can attach to that split apron or two side apron body. Everything about them except for one thing is spot on. So let's forget that photograph on the back of the box hasn't been painted up really to depict a Kanzu Brave. It's been depicted up more to represent a Chinese infantryman, a regular infantryman. They would have had two different types of dress by the time of the Boxer Rebellion. One would have had a single apron going across their front. That was more sort of traditional clothing, but the Chinese army was being modernised in the time of at this time, and a lot of regular infantrymen had a more Western style, shall we say, type of tunic, which wouldn't have had those aprons and so on. The big discrepancy, though, between this figure here, this illustration, and these figures here, is that around the waist of all the bodies that have that split apron, there is a sash rather than a bandolier. While I'm focusing on the Osprey book, let me just change the page and show you a photograph that is in I don't know how well you can see that, but there is a photograph of some Kansu Braves. You can see the design. So although it's a black and white photo, you can see the sort of red panels and the yellow borders and the design. You can see the bandolier around the waist of that figure there. You can see the headscarves. So, in other words, that illustration, is a pretty good colour reproduction of that original black and white photograph, and the figures are not a bad. They're close to that figure, but they're not 100% there. Now, my point would be, and my whole issue with this set of boxes is that I purchased them for the reasons I was giving you earlier, that I wanted to get a bulk. I wanted to add a lot of figures cheaply to my boxes, not to my Chinese regular kind of infantry. And regular, in a way, is the wrong word to use, because the Kansu Braves were an irregular branch of the Chinese army. So, but my whole point is, it's lazy wording to call them boxers. There is a difference between the appearance of boxers and Chinese army, Chinese infantry, and these figures fail to depict either accurately because they try to depict both. And the irony of it all is that the most accurate thing that they do depict is the Kansu Braves, not the boxers. The actual boxers that I've shown you before are further from the accurate kind of depiction that I require than these figures are, the Kansu Braves. I didn't want to buy Kansu Braves. I've got enough of them already, metal figures. I think my figures are from Ironclad. They are a far more accurate depiction of a Kansu Brave, and I'm happy with them. I bought these plastic figures because I thought, although I should have realised from the cover photographs, but I thought I was going to be able to get 30 boxes, and I bought 3 boxes thinking I would have 90 figures in the end, and they would be, there were so many variables within the boxes, I would be able to get 90 almost unique individual figures out of it, and that is far from the way it's actually worked out. If I go back to the box art again and show you what I mean looking at the photographs. And again, apologies, I really don't think I'm going to be able to hone in on this accurately enough, but if you can see this figure at the front in this photograph here that hasn't got this split apron or two side aproned apparel, he's wearing what almost looks like a vest or a sort of tabard over a tunic of some kind, and underneath that tunic, and you can see it quite clearly on this figure because they painted the sleeve in black, but there's another undergarment which has white sleeves. Now the reason, so in other words, he's got 3 layers of clothing just over his upper body alone. That just isn't right. For one thing, the Boxers were primarily a sort of peasant movement. It was a peasant uprising. It incorporated a lot of the dispossessed and disenchanted lower classes of Chinese society. So it took in lots of artisans and city-dwelling Chinese living sort of on the brink of poverty. It swept up lots of people in this social unrest that was going on and led to the Boxer movement. But they were poor. They didn't dress. They didn't overdress. They didn't have 3 layers of clothing on, especially at this time, which was a period of heat and drought, and that was the drought itself was half the reason why the uprising took place. That there was famine, there was drought, and you wouldn't be wearing, even if you could afford to do so, you wouldn't be wearing 3 layers of clothing. I mean, a lot of them wouldn't have been wearing anything on their top at all. They would have been bare-chested. You can't produce anything like that with these plastic figures because they have tried to give the purchaser the option of making figures such as these Kanzu Braves. And the Kanzu Braves had, and you can see it quite clearly here, they had an inner sleeve that showed through at the cuff underneath their main garment, and that is what all the arms, not just some of them, all the arms in the box set have, because it's been designed, it had to be designed in order to produce that that possibility. So they have scuppered being able to reproduce, an authentic looking representation of a boxer rebel, by trying to do too much with this box set. And I do wonder, I know I pointed this out on the previous video I made, but I don't think I have today. I do wonder if there was some last minute change of plan or something, change in the design plans, because it says on the box you can build up to 10 figures in the box as the famous Kanzu Braves. How do they get to the figure of 10? It's impossible. You've got 6 identical sprues, so 12, or 6 maybe, definitely not 10. So something was altered there. I don't think that's a mistake. I think it was originally going to be 10, and maybe they had another body type on the sprues. Maybe they were going to have two different types of sprue. I don't know, but they have just gone one step too far with the design. Now, because I didn't want, I don't want any more Kanzu Braves. I'm, up to my neck in Kanzu Braves now. As far I know, that's an exaggeration, but you know what I mean. I want boxes. I don't want Kanzu Braves. So I thought what I would do in this particular box with the other six bodies that have got this split side apron was to try. I thought, why not try and represent this other chap here, a Tigerman. You can see that he's wearing very similar outer clothing with the split apron or the two side aprons. Where it differs from where this differs from the plastic figures in the box is that he's got this fairly short sort of tabard like top over that, and the only option you get in the actual figures is to have a slightly longer over garment, but I didn't think it would matter too much. I thought I could get something vaguely resembling that Tigerman, but I'm still not happy. He's still got a sash around the waist, all those figures have, which the illustration of the Tigerman in the Osprey book doesn't have. So by the way, I've painted all the sashes on the figures red, as I have done with the sashes that shouldn't actually be there on the Kanzu Braves. There should be a bandolier. Painted them red because the boxers, the actual boxers, not the Chinese army, but the boxers tended to wear a lot of red scarves, red sashes, red bits of ribbon around their sleeves and so on, and that was their distinct, that was kind of badge that they wore to show that they were, allegiance of the boxer movement. So I've gone for that as a colour for the sashes, just to sort of tie them in with the theme of the Boxer Rebellion a little bit more, as close as I can get it. But these Tigermen don't look right either. They look less right than the Kanzu Braves, but I just, I've had it up to here with Kanzu Braves and wanted to try and get some other form of, infantrymen out of them and not turn them into the irregular boxers, because they're just far too overdressed with with this double apron, side apron. Now again, more and more divergences between reality here. So Tigermen originally were light infantrymen in the Chinese army, and their main function was to act as light infantrymen, to act as kind of as skirmishers, but their sort of chief role ended up being to break up cavalry charges, and the way they did that was that they were armed with a sword and shield, wicker shield, and they also had a grappling hook that they wore around their body, wrapped around their body, but they would use that to pull riders down from their mounts. Nothing like that in this box set. So not only are these figures lacking the grappling hook, they have got a proper looking sword, which is good. They're not only lacking the grappling hook though, but I haven't put on the wicker shields, which the Tigerman would have had, and which are available in the box. So why did I do that? Well, again, I did speak about this in the previous video, and I did put shields onto some of my figures that I painted up from the previous box. But if I can just get a sprue out without too much effort, put it up against the back there and try and focus in on it. So there you can see the shield. This is the back of the shield, and these wicker shields were worn by placing the arm through two circular attachments. I think they're probably rope or something like that. So what Wargames Atlantic have done is reproduce the shield quite nicely, quite accurately, but the rope, these circular, things that you fed your arm through, are both flat to the shield. Why didn't they put an arm on that shield? Because it just looks totally stupid. You really have to just glue the arm down or glue the fist into the circular hole there. It just looks stupid. It really does get to me, and I absolutely refuse. Maybe I'll relent some future date and paint the shields up and put them on, just to make them look a little bit, a little bit closer to the historical reality. I don't know, but you might be thinking as well, why is it that Osprey book show the Tigerman as wearing these sort of black and yellow striped tunics when it does say on the box somewhere, you can create the famous Tigerman, but it's not referring to that appearance. What it's talking about is that they give you a head variant. Again, you probably won't be able to see this too well. I think that's out of focus, but they give you a head variant which is wearing literally a sort of head covering that's got like fur. It's made of fur and it's got ears on it. Makes the wearer look like he's in tiger costume, and that is the appearance that that some of the Tigermen went the full hog and did dress up as though they were tigers. So in another Osprey book here, I'll show you. That is what they look like. So they've got this sort of furry, almost looks like a onesie. There is actually one of these headgear things in the National Army Museum. I took a picture of it the last time I was there. I'll try and put that up on the screen so you can see that as well. But you can see this dress is nothing like any of the bodies that they offer you in the plastic box set. The head is spot on. They've got a head that's spot on, but nothing like these sort of pajama-like clothing. And by the way, just there, if I can get it in shot, there's your kind of Western style infantryman that I was talking about earlier. Anyway, that's by the way. There's no way, absolutely no way can you get that appearance from any of these plastic figures, but you can get something that resembles more of the sort of traditional colouring, which I think is what they were attempting. In that photograph there, beginning a bit chaotic this in my presentation. So basically it's absolute fudge, and not really happy at all with any of the figures that I've got out of this half of the box set or my previous completed box set. You have to keep hiding things, you know. So for instance, on the Tigerman, they still have got that inner sleeve going, but I've painted it the same colour, so it's barely discernible, but when you look closely you can see that there are two sleeves there, not one. You know, it's just and the other thing that I tried to do, which again spoke about on the last video I did on the Wargames Atlantic boxes, is basically all the weapons are held, in fact the rifles or muskets or whatever they are of the Kansu Braves, there are two different rifles. One of them, like that, is actually attached to both arms. There's another one that I didn't make a very good job of, which is just been held by the right hand at the trigger, and then you have an open hand that you glue to the body and then glue to the weapon. But in general, I think all of the weapons other than that rifle are held in one hand. Sometimes it's the left hand, sometimes it's the right. So, you know, it gets back to my point about why on earth couldn't they have you know, sculpted an arm attached to that shield? You know, it would have made it look a lot more realistic. But anyway, so you always have on the sprue the counter. You know, if it's the right arm that's holding the weapon, you'll have an open left hand. If it's a two-handed weapon, if it's so you can make it look realistic, and it does look realistic, it looks pretty good. And then you have other two-handed weapons that are held in the left hand with an open right hand, you know, so you can do the same thing. But it occurred to me, well, wonder if it would be possible to use two, you know, both a right and a left open hand, try and fit some kind of banner in, because it's lacking in banner holders, and the boxers movement as a whole was famous for its colourful banners and, you know, and so on. I've just found it impossible to do, and that's not the fault of Wargames Atlantic. The box set isn't designed for that to be a possibility, but I just found it impossible to do. You know, however I tried, I couldn't get both hands to meet the staff of the flag or whatever. So in the end, I just have them holding. I've done the same with this Kansu Brave here. I have them holding the flag with one hand, and in the other I've put the clenched fist, you know, so that one there is holding his clenched fist up in the air. So it looks just about doable that they can carry the flag with one hand. It wasn't my intention, but that's how it's ended up, and it's broken them up a little bit. It made them look a little bit less repetitive in their postures, you know. And I haven't used the expensive flags that I bought from the flag dude on them. I've just used some more of the flags that I got from Victorious miniatures, but they're available from Adrian's Walls. Not terribly good paper, but they turned out all right. So yeah, definitely wouldn't recommend Wargames Atlantic. Very, again, I've said it on a previous video, but I'll repeat it here. I'm getting really disillusioned with YouTube, and in particular the online influencers on YouTube, because I haven't seen anywhere on YouTube, a review that lists any of these major, I think they're major shortcomings of the range. They're all very effusive and praising Wargames Atlantic. The Wargames Atlantic have even got on their website a YouTube review from On Tabletop, and it just doesn't go into any of this at all. I'm sorry, but they just have no integrity. They've got something like 111,000 subscribers, who clearly follow them, and they've got a large following. Wargames Atlantic has got a loyal following, but be honest with people, talk about the shortcomings. YouTube influencers, have a bit more integrity. As I say, just give a proper review. Don't whitewash all these things. There is a lot. These are nice figures. There is a lot in their favour. They just don't do for me, and as I say, really regret buying them, and wouldn't recommend any of you, if you're into the Box of Rebellion, buying them either. What they are, is really just sort of generic Chinamen, that you can use in that period. So perfect for the people who play, sort of not fantasy games, alternative reality, Chinese villains in Victorian London, all that kind of thing. They work for that, but they don't work for historic gameplay. They're just not right as far as I'm concerned. And obviously I'm going to use them now. I'm going to put away the other box and a half, and they're just become part of my lead and plastic mountain. Oh, I should say as well, one of the big, I'll just finish my main by saying, one of the obviously big advantages of plastic is its cost effectiveness, and Wargames Atlantic boxes get cheaper the more boxes you buy. But if you just bought an individual box, it costs you £25 and you get 30 figures in there, so that's 83 pence a figure. Now, the way I look at it is only 18 out of those 30 figures can you use to make boxes, and not very good looking boxes at that, not very authentic looking boxes at that, but 18 figures just about suitable for boxes. That puts the price up to £1.39p a figure. It's still cheap, but I have taken a little bit of a sort of test out Old Glory, who have a Box of Rebellion range. So you get 30 figures in this bag as well. These are £35. So that is £1.17 a figure. So more expensive than in total 30 figures in the plastic box, but cheaper if you're after boxes. And they all look, I haven't opened the bag up yet, but they all look good to me. They all look right. Old Glory can be a little bit hit and miss in the poses and the weird, but they all look pretty good, without taking them out of the bag. I haven't inspected them thoroughly, but the clothing is right. I can see immediately they've all got proper, they're all dressed properly. accurately. And these are just 30 figures with pole arms. You can have another bag with single-handed weapons. I think there's a command bag. And they are boxers, and they do bags and bags of Tigerman and Kanzu Braves. So you don't have to fudge it. You can get, you know, you can get figures that look right relatively cheaply, more cheaply if you're being pernickety than the Wargames, Atlantic figures are. So I'm not going to buy Wargames Atlantic boxes again. It does worry me about the validity of a lot of online praise for some of their other ranges now. It's kind of put me off Wargames Atlantic. Period. Regardless of the troop types in their boxes, I worry now about what I'm going to get. And I'm going to stick to metal. Because there's so many good metal ranges out there that do a whole wide variety of periods. I mean, that's the other thing I say about the on tabletop review, that they said Wargames Atlantic had found a niche. It's rubbish. There are at least 10 metal manufacturers out there who maybe they found a niche within the plastic side, because I'm not aware of any other plastic boxes. But yeah, I'm going to stick with metal. And on the subject of that, let me switch to the other figures that I painted, which I'm a lot happier with. You'll be pleased to hear. Right, it's something that's put me in a better mood. Tiger miniatures. So purchased these end of last year. They were kind of a new range to me at the time, although I have noticed that Tiger Miniatures seem to be attending quite a lot more shows nowadays. So these are German colonial Ascaris, regular Ascaris for East Africa. And it's not a common subject. Quite rare to get find ranges of German colonial troops. Always sort of been interested in building up a German colonial army, mainly as a sort of a kind of what if opponent to my Maasai army. So that's my principal interest in them. I've already shown you, I've painted up some command groups and so on, and a mountain gun with crew. Still got a few more figures from my original purchase to paint up, some irregular Ascaris, and an Ascari machine gun and an Ascari mountain gun and some mules and so on. So I should have, a reasonable size force by the time I've completed them all, and I'll be able to play games to begin with, like The Men Who Would Be Kings. I could even, I was thinking when I was painting these, they would fit into a game like Congo. I could probably even field probably a white men's expedition force for Congo. But yeah, lots of possibilities opening up, and I think they're not bad figures. They have a peculiar look of their own, shall we say. The hands and faces are kind of sort of cartoonish. The hands in particular very large, really big sausage fingers and so on. The metal isn't the most flexible of all, and so there are a few gun barrels broken off. but there's meant to be 20 figures here. There's actually 22. So I bought 4 packs of 5, but including, was an additional figure in 2 of those bags. So whether they do that, I don't know, to make up for the anticipated breakages, but then none of the figures had broken in the post because the ends of the rifles weren't in the bags, broken off. So I have noticed as well, they tend to be a little bit like in my previous I showed you some previous figures I painted up that included a sort of an additional figure, so for free, so maybe they just throw things in. He seems to be quite free with his mules. He's always handing those out free. But anyway, yeah, so 22 figures when there should have been 20. I don't mind the odd little break. It is annoying, but prepared to put up with it. They are very elongated as well. If you imagine, or if you look, none of them have got bayonets fixed. The bayonets are all still in the scabbards, on their hips. Imagine how tall these figures would be if they actually had another centimetre or so of bayonet attached to the rifles. It'd be colossal. So they do seem to be a little bit stretched vertically as well in terms of their proportions. But maybe that's right. Maybe that's correct. Maybe if the bayonet was on and the butt of the weapon was down on the ground, it would be roughly the same height as a human being next to it. But yeah, really pleased with these. Going to crack on now with the irregulars. They're very accurately detailed, especially the irregular Ascaris, because there's a very good website. I've forgotten the name of the author, but you can find it easily just by googling German colonial uniforms. You'll get to it straight away. And he's got illustrations, depictions of irregular Ascaris on the German side, and the Swahili Ascaris wore a kind of naval top, and that's how these figures are depicted that I'm about to paint up. So unusual and accurate. Although unfortunately the painted figures on the Tiger Miniatures website are just, afraid to say, they're just awful. They're not very well painted in general, but the colours that they use on them are just wrong as well. This naval top that the irregular Ascaris wore had the German colours on it, so black, white and red, but they've actually painted on the website, they've painted them red, white and blue. Just don't know what's going on there. But so again, as I said in the previous video, they've chosen some very odd colours to paint the overcoats and things like that as well. So I haven't used the website as a reference for what colours to use at all. Sort of gone with my own impression of what is more accurate. And yeah, I'm pleased with these, as I said. So sorry about the rant earlier on the Wargames Atlantic, but I just can't, stop myself. Have to get these things off my chest. But these are much nicer, and I would recommend these. But then again, probably the majority of you out there aren't interested in German colonial wargaming. But anyway, that's the end of my update, or update on further painting progress I've made. Thanks very much for watching. See you on the next video. Bye for now.